Yeah, I like this better. Okay. Shalom Aleichem, everybody. Good evening. Tu B'Shvat Sameach. It's not Shiur on Tu B'Shvat, but if there's time at the end, we could hopefully maybe talk about it a bit and some other things. The Shiur is going to be Leilu Nishmat, my grandfather, Yaakov ben Shalom. Also, Leilu Nishmat, Binyamin ben Yaakov. For those that don't know who that is, that's Nadam. Anybody from the shul remember Nadam hits his yard site this Shabbat, same as my grandfather. So Leilu Nishmatam, and also the Refuah Shelema, whoever needs Refuah, Latzlacha of the Am Yisrael, Klal Yisrael. May the hostages come back b'shalom. Hopefully very soon. B'ezras Hashem, in good health. Okay, so let's get into this. So we're going to be talking about the laws of saying Kaddish and why we say Kaddish, and between the davening aspect, the praying aspect of saying Kaddish, and the Kaddishim in the tefillah and the prayers, and also a person saying Kaddish in general for a relative, one of the close relatives, such as a parent or a sibling. So let's begin. Okay. So why do we say Kaddish for someone that passed on? As we know that maybe a lot of you probably already know that when somebody passes away, usually there's 11 to 12 months we say Kaddish for that period of time, and as well as other things, and there's also mourning and stuff like that. We're not going to really talk about the laws of mourning and Avilut and whatnot. But just to point out, all these laws that we have in Minhagim of Avilut and saying Kaddishim are very important things that a person should do for their close relatives, such as parents. Even, this week's parasha is Parashat Yitro, which is the Ten Commandments, and one of the Ten Commandments, famous one that we all know and love, Kaved et avicha ve'et imecha, respecting and honoring your parents. And one way that we can honor our parents much more than we can when they're alive is it's hard to say, but it's the truth. But after Admei Veslim B'ezras Hashem, after a parent passes away, this is the way we respect them by saying Kaddish, and we'll explain why. So, but how did it begin? Because the truth is that Kaddishim were the Rabbanim put the Kaddish together. As we say, the Gadal with Kadash, it's Aramaic, and they put it in Aramaic so that the Ben Ish Chai actually brings down that it was put in Aramaic so that the klipot, which are the shells, is a bit of a Kabbalistic idea that they won't hang on to that Kaddish, and it will be just for us. And also, in general, why are things in what's called Targum or Aramaic and not in Hebrew? Because more people understood the Targum than they did understand the Hebrew. And today it's unfortunately the opposite. But back then that's what it was, and that's why the entire Gemara and Zohar and many things we see are in Aramaic, and this is why, because it was more of an understood language versus Hebrew. So anyway, but even with that said, the Kaddish was meant for tefillot, changing within the realms of the prayers. That's why we would say Kaddish, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But why say for somebody that passed away? So where do we learn that we have to do this, and it's a big mitzvah to do this? So the story of Rabbi Akiva and the man gathering stones. So we're going to talk about that story quickly. So I'll pause the share just so that people could see me, because I think that will be better. So here we go. So the story of Rabbi Akiva and the person gathering stones. So Rabbi Akiva, and this is brought down in a midrash. It's not brought down in the Gemara. It's brought down in a midrash. It's a very valid source, but it's like hard to find. The old, when I was doing my due diligence for this lecture, I found it in a different place from different sources, but it's a well-known story and a very famous story of Rabbi Akiva, who is a Tana, as we talked about in our last lecture. Rabbi Akiva was walking through a cemetery one day. Why, that I'm not sure. And he came across a man who was gathering wood, firewood, and stuff like that. And Rabbi Akiva saw that this man was, in a lot of tzar, very, suffering, and very, didn't look well. So Rabbi Akiva stopped to, and by the, and I'll explain in depth. But Rabbi Akiva stopped and said, what's going on? Why are you in so much tzar, so much turmoil? What happened? And let me just make it clear that Rabbi Akiva wasn't talking to somebody that's alive. He was talking to somebody that was dead, and somebody that was not just dead, but suffering the punishment of Gehenna, which is what we know today as hell or purgatory. So to explain that is very deep, but this is how the story goes. So Rabbi Akiva saw this guy and said, what's going on? Why are you why are you doing all this? Why do you have to do all this?" So the man said, he died and he was punished for certain things that he did. He wasn't a good man and he cheated a lot of people and he stole from a lot of people. And so, Rabbi Akiva asked him, how do I get you out of this mess? How do I, get you, help you? How do I, get you to a better place? So the man told him, there's not much to do, but I did hear that if I would have had a child, a son, and he would say the Kaddish and Barechu and Bia Chazan in the Minyan, and so on and so forth, then that would, elevate my neshama out. So Rabbi Akiva made it his mission to go and, see if he could find this guy's family, and he committed to getting this man out of Gehenom, purgatory. So Rabbi Akiva went to his hometown, and he asked people about this man, and all the people said, "Shem Yishayim Yokav, Rasha, wicked, very bad guy. Good that he died." Whatever weren't wishing this man well, unfortunately, because the man didn't do good things, and so Rabbi Akiva found his family, his wife, and then he found out that he had a son, and that son knew nothing of Judaism, wasn't in the parsha, as we say, wasn't in the mindset. And Rabbi Akiva tried to teach him, Aleph Bet and the bit of Torah and how to and all the stuff that he needed in order to redeem his father. And as much as he tried, it wasn't working. So Rabbi Akiva fasted for 40 days, 40 nights straight, and it's very intense, but he did that. And when after those 40 days and nights of fasting, the child started to understand a bit more. He was, getting things going. He was getting the material much better, to the point where eventually he was Chazan. He said the Kaddish, Baruchu, and after that, the Rabbi Akiva saw in a dream this man, the father, and the father thanked him so much, and he was redeemed from his purgatory and went to Gan Eden. And this is basically the story and the yesod, the foundation of why today we say Kaddishim for someone that passed away. This is the story. Any questions on that before we move on? You can feel free to unmute your mics or put in the chat if anybody has a question on this, and then we shall move forward. Okay, let's move forward. So now we have different types of Kaddishim, as most people know. There is the Chatzi Kaddish, the half Kaddish, which is basically Yitgadal v'Kadash, Yehesh Shemer Rabba, La'ela min kol bechatav, Da'amiyon ba'alma. That's that. For those that know, that is the Chatzi Kaddish, the half Kaddish, and usually it's recited before starting the the prayers, such as we say it before Amidah and uh, and before Barachot of Kriyat Shema, the blessings of Kriyat Shema and Kriyat Shema Shema Yisrael. Um, Also, another thing that I wrote here that's very interesting to know, and the Ben Ish Chai brings it down and it's brought down in Kabbalah, that the reason why we have Kaddishim in the prayer services, and it's an obligation, by the way, to hear these Kaddishim every day. People think that, oh, you only have to go to a minyan when you're saying Kaddish. No, you have to go to a minyan every day because you have to hear Kaddish. In fact, on Yom Kippur, we confess for the times that we didn't hear all the Amenim, all the Kaddishim, the Kedusha. We confess for these things on Yom Kippur, so it's a very it's an obligation. So but why do we need to say it during prayer? So we say it so that it changed the realms of the tefillah, and I won't go into it so deep, but specifically in tefillat shachrit in the morning prayer during the week specifically, there are different realms of the prayer. Um, for example, it starts with Korbanot, then it goes to Psukei Dezimus, Ashrei, and the Tehillim, then Kriyat Shema, then the Shemona Esrei, and basically we say Kaddishim throughout, in different parts of throughout the whole process, and we say it so that it goes up a level, down a level, and it's not just limited to the Chatzi Kaddish, it's also the other Kaddishim, as I wrote here. Kaddish titkabal, and that is Kaddish titkabal says titkabal sotano baotana im sotehon ubaotechon. That is we say that Kaddish at the end of a prayer when we prayed when we said the Amida prayer Shmona Esrei and the Kiddusha, then we say usually Kaddish titkabal after that.
This is the Kaddish you say before Aleinu, correct? You're talking about?
No. This is after Shmona Esrei, before in Mincha it's before Lam Natzech, and it's before Shila Ma'alot in Arvit. And
Isn't
also
it Seshi the Chazan doing this only?
the Chazan does this, yes. All these
Only the Chazan.
the Chatzi Kaddish and the Kaddish Titkabal is usually only Chazan does this.
Okay, then the one before Aleinu and everything else is when the mourners do it, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay, it's double checking, thank you.
Right. That happens to be another interesting thing to know is that if let's say you had this is specifically more in Shachrit applies, but let's say you somebody was Chazan and he said the Chatzi Kaddish, he started before Kriyat Shema, and then by Ubal Tzion he may be a bit tired, or somebody else wants to take over. They shouldn't take over until after Kaddish Titkabah, because he said the first Kaddish he should also finish the Tefillah, because he was the Shaliach Tzibur, he was the Chazan. But anyway, not to get off topic. But also when we say Kaddish Titkabah, we also change the realms of the Tefillah. Any questions on that part before we continue? Okay. Anybody put anything in the chat? Just want to make sure. Oh, no, nobody put anything. Okay. On to the next. Okay. So now we have other types of Kaddishim. Sorry, Mechila. Okay. We have other types of Kaddishim, and these are known more to the people that are mourning, that say it, such as Kaddish Yesh Shalama and Kaddish Al Yisrael, Yesh Shalama Rabba Mishemaya Chaim V'Sava, and Kaddish Al Yisrael V'Al Rabbanan. So now a very interesting question is, when do we recite this Kaddish? When do we recite that Kaddish? So usually Kaddish Yesh Shalama is recited after reciting Tanakh, written Torah, and specifically Tehillim. When we recite many Tehillim, we say Kaddish Yesh Shalama usually, and we see this also in prayer. For example, before we say the second Ketot in Shachrit, we said a lot of the Tehillim, such as Tfilat David. If anybody knows the Siddur, the weekday Shachrit, we say Tfilat David, Bet Yaakov, Shir Shel Yom. All this is Tanakh, so that's why we say Kaddish Yesh Shalama. Now Kaddish Al Yisrael is for when we recite oral Torah, when we said things like Mishnayot, or as in Tfilat Shachrit, we say Ketoret. That's all. Yes, it's psukim from the Torah, but it's also the Baraita from the Yerushalmi, and I'm forgetting which Masechet it is, but it's the Baraita, it's oral Torah, it's Torah Shebe'al Peh. And some examples, Talmud, as I said, Halacha, Midrashim, Pirushim. And when we recite these things, whether in prayer or whether we hear a lecture or even learning, we say Kaddish al Yisrael. There's a yeshiva in Israel called a Sephardi yeshiva called Or Chaim, run by a Rav Reuven Elbaz Shlita, very big Rav, Gadol Ador. And usually between Sdarim, the Seder, when they finish, a couple hours worth of learning, they say Kaddish al Yisrael, and everybody says Kaddish. It's a very nice thing. But usually in the shul, they say Kaddish al Yisrael because it says Al Yisrael v'al Rabbanan. It's referring to the oral Torah. Any questions on that part? Going once, going twice. So, okay. So, when the yard site, the year of a person's is called Ptila in Hebrew or Haskara, or even in Hebrew they say yard site. The year of a person's passing is coming. When do we start reciting Kaddish? So there's a machloket, there's a difference between Ashkenazim and Sfaradim. The Ashkenazim recite Kaddish on the Shabbat before the day of the yard site, and then they don't recite Kaddish until the day of the yard site. That's Ashkenazim. Sfaradim are a bit different. We accepted a minhag that we recite from Shabbat before, and we say Kaddish every day, 3 tefillot a day, until the end of the day of the yard site. Meaning, for example, you have, let's say Monday, you have is the yard site. So on Shabbat, you'll start saying Kaddish by Kabbalat Shabbat, and then you keep saying Kaddish 3 tefillot a day, so Shabbat, Sunday, and then until Monday by Mincha, and then you finish. That's the end of the yard site. And if the yard site is on Shabbat, then Kaddish is recited from the Shabbat before, as we said, every day until the end of next Shabbat. Like for my grandfather this year, Kaddish was started Shabbat before and then finished by Mincha on Shabbat. And so that's the difference. Happens to be, I was listening once to a shiur by, I call him a Gaon, but Big Rav Meir Eliyahu, which if anybody has the zechut to listen to him, he speaks in the famous synagogue called Musayev, big minyan, Sephardi minyan factory in Mea Shearim, the heart of a lot of Jewish people. So he actually he brings down based on a lot of sources that really the best time and the only time really it's the best time to recite the Kaddish is really the yard site. There's no real need to do it all the days before, but it's a minhag by Sfaradim to do it, and it's a very good thing to do, and it adds to the niftar, to the deceased. I even heard from a Rav here in Great Neck, a friend of mine had to say Kaddish for his father. The yard site was on Sunday. So now, if it's on Sunday, then you start Shabbat before. That means you start the day before. You only say Kaddish 2 days. So the Rav told him to start from the Sunday before and until the Motzei Shabbat after. Ask your local Orthodox rabbi what to do in that situation, but there is an idea like that. Any questions?
Actually, just a comment. I actually didn't know that for Sephardim it's before and after the Shabbat. I thought it was just like one day and that was it actually. So you taught me something new actually. I didn't realize this.
Yeah, it's Shabbat and every day until the yard site.
Yeah, I thought just a one day and that's it. So you taught me something new.
Baruch Hashem.
Yeah.
Okay, next. So now let's say somebody, Rahman Litzlan, is lost somebody, lo alenu. How long is Kaddish recited for someone that's mourning? So it's also different by Ashkenazim and Sfaradim, also Teimanim. Kaddish is recited, so for Ashkenazim, Kaddish is recited each day in all 3 daily prayers for 11 months straight. And during the 12th month, Kaddish is recited, just like we said before, the Shabbat before and the day of the yard site. That's Lefi Ashkenazim. I think also the period of Avelut, of mourning, is also, I'm not exactly sure about this one, but I believe it's either for only 11 months, and then they don't have any mourning obligations till for the 12th month. By Sfaradim, it's the whole year. The mourning obligations, the avelut. Another thing that okay, Kaddish for Sfaradim, uh, Kaddish is recited each day from the day of the burial. By the way, not from the day a person passed away, from the day of the burial. And Kaddish is recited each day, all three daily prayers for 12 months straight, minus the first week of the 12th month until the end. So there's a machloket by Sfaradim, and I'll get into that. But usually the well-known custom by Sfaradim is to say for 12 months straight, and we skip a week at the start of the 12th month. If they're three brothers, then they can alternate weeks. One will stop and then the other brother will say. And also something that if a person has a few siblings, brothers can do that. So that's the main thing we do. There is also Lifi different approach Kabbalistically and whatnot, that Kaddish is recited each day, all three daily prayers for all 12 months straight, no breaks at all. Meaning a person from the moment until the end, no non-stop. There is an opinion like this. Now, why we skip a week or 11 months? The reason is because it says that a person, the process of Gehenom, for some people it's different, but for everybody, but the process of the judgment and the purgatory is a year. So now, if there's it's a well-known pshat in halacha Kabbalah. If a person, you know, is in Gehenom, then if Kaddish is said for that person for a whole year straight, then it will take him out of Gehenom. So now, sounds good, right? So why would we stop for a week? Because who are we to say that what I can go and say that this person is going there or that person is going there? No, who am I? So it is a machloket whether to do it, and some people do one or the other, but uh, always, ask your local Orthodox rabbi on what is best in that situation. But it's interesting. We can't really, who are we to say that that person is going to get another? Who are we? We're Hashem? No, but also on the other side of it, what if our loved one is suffering? We need to do something here. We need, it's important. Any questions? Okay. So, what about after 12 months of saying Kaddish? Let's say you finish the yard site. So, there's no obligation to recite Kaddish after the first 12 months. However, this is a big however, when there's a minyan of 10 people learning Torah Sheba'al Peh, oral Torah, or a rabbi giving a lecture, Torah lecture, to a group of 10 men, 10 plus men. At the end of the lecture, we recite the Mishnah in Masechet Makot, famous Mishnah, Rabbi Chananya ben Akashar Omer, Ratzah Kadosh Baruch Hu lezakot Yisrael, לפיכך חיבר להם תורה ומצוות שנאמר, אדוני יחפש למען זכור יחדית תורה וידיר. We say this Mishnah in the Pasuk and say Kaddish, Al Yisrael. At that point, there is a very big inyan and huge merit to say Kaddish for a person relative, and it doesn't matter if it's the yard site, if it's within the 12 months, it doesn't matter. It's still a very, very big, big, big thing for the neshama, for the soul, and it raises the soul very much so, even after 12 months, to say a Kaddish after a Dvar Torah. And this was the minhag by Iraqis, actually, to do this. During the Chagim, I prayed in a shul called Bet Aaron in Eretz Yisrael, in Yerushalayim, Hiclhot Kaddish. And over there, during the week, the Rav will give a bit of halachot, small little halachot from the Ben Ish Chai, actually. And then they say Kaddish, and you'll notice that a lot more people say Kaddish than the people that were saying Kaddish before. Why? Because there's a very big inyan. It's a huge, huge thing for the for a deceased to do this. Moving forward. Other now, besides Kaddish, which is a very important thing, and for a son, very important for a parent and vice versa. There are other things that also outside of saying Kaddish that a person can do for their loved one, such as learning Torah, Leilu Nishmat, in memory of the person, give tzedakah in memory, sponsor Torah lectures in memory, meaning you go, you know a rabbi that's going to give a lecture, or speaking whether it's to a yeshiva or to a synagogue, give him money so that he can, he has what he needs to give a lecture. Very, very big, by the way, and especially if it's a recorded lecture that goes to millions of people, then there's more schar, there's more reward for it. So dafka, even more so, you should go find a rabbi that speaks online and has a good rabbi, not a bad rabbi, but a good rabbi that has a good amount of followers. Give him some money, say Linu Nishmat Ploni ben Ploni, and then there you go. You're doing a tremendous things for that person in Shemayim, in the heavens. Reciting Tehillim is also very good. Make a big blessed festive meal with other people. When I say big blessed festive, meaning you make what we call suuda, a meal, nice meal. You put a lot of food. You make the kubba, the plaujij. What else do we eat by us? Kai, maybe not relevant, but whatever. You put the food together and make a nice meal, and you make hamotzi on bread, and you say Birkat Hamazon, and you bring a lot of people to join in, and it's very nice. It could be a dinner meal, breakfast meal. It's always nice to do that for somebody. Rav Meir Eliyahu once said that he once went to a synagogue, and there was a guy, random Bukharian guy, doing a yahrzeit meal for his father, and mamash, it was like a meal for a brit milah or a bar mitzvah or something. Like there was catering and so much food and so this and you know what Rav Meir Eliyahu said about this? He said, "Halvai that we all do something like this for our parents on the yahrzeit. Halvai, meaning it's a great thing and we should encourage this type of behavior. Also, bringing food might mean it's not the same thing, but bring food for others and yourself to make blessings on. Bring like some cakes, cookies, snacks, put it like in the synagogue and put a sign. I actually did this for my grandfather. Put a sign that says Lilu Nishmat Ploni ben Ploni, and put some food there. They make blessings, and it's very good for the neshama. A person dafka kal v'chomer, even more so. A person should do this for himself. Put cake, put this, and people say blessings, and you therefore cause people to say blessings on food. You get a lot of reward for it. It's a big mitzvah. Another thing and by the way, these are things that men and women can do, by the way. Um, Now here's the thing that only men can do. Pray for the Amud, be a Chazan. Uh, because there's more Kaddishim that a Chazan says, it's very nice, especially on the day of the Yortzeit or when saying Kaddish for the year, for a person to go up and be Chazan. By the Ashkenazim, most of the time you go to Ashkenazi shul, majority of the time, if not all, it's always an Avel davening. It's always somebody who's saying Kaddish for the year davening. Why? Because they're very, 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 very makpid, very, very serious about Avelim davening for the praying for the Chazan, especially during the week. By Sfaradim, we're not so crazy about it. Sometimes some synagogues like to, give the respect to a person to pray, but we're not so crazy about it, and sometimes it gets way too out of hand. Personally, I think. And another thing and a very, very big thing, especially on the day of the Yortzeit, get an aliyah, specifically the maftir and the haftarah. A lot of people think, oh, it's better to get mashlin because there's a kaddish in there that we say, and that's not true. it's actually better to get the maftir. Even though there's no Kaddish, it's much better and very, very big for the Gemara also writes it, excuse me, that it's very good for the neshama, for the soul, to get to go up for maftir and aftara and read it even. But if a person can't read it and he can't say it correctly, better to have somebody read it for him, but he says the blessings. By the way, same thing for the chazan. If a person goes up chazan for father and mother, they need to make sure that they know how to pray correctly with the correct with the correct, not dialect, with the correct words, syllables, etc. There are a lot of people that, unfortunately don't know how to pray and say the words correctly. And one thing that I love about Aaron Abraham is that he was very makpid. He was very, very serious about saying the words correctly, especially with myself. And this is something that Baruch Hashem in my life I grew upon, and is very important because, and we'll talk about this more, because it's a question if that person fulfilled, the obligations of praying and many other things, if they didn't say the words correctly. And I could give a whole lecture about that, but that's for another time. So yeah, these are the things that a person can do. There's many more things a person can do for a yahrzeit or even during the year. By Bukharians, during the year, once a month they do a suda, they do a nice meal for the Lilu Nishmat the Nifta. That's what Bukharians do. They actually do the first 7 days of the Shiva, they do all 7 days. Then they do a big one for the seventh day, and then every month they do one until the yahrzeit. That's what Bukharians do. Any questions before we move on? Everybody put in the chat. Okay. So now, obviously we say what's called hashkavot, which is a not a it's a blessing for the soul. It's hard to kind of explain it in English, the hashkavot. A good question, and my father even asked me this. When do we say hashkavot? So in the year of mourning, we can say it every day until the end of the yahrzeit. You ask, if you don't know how to say it yourself, you ask the gabbai or the rav, nishmat ploni ben ploni. So that's what we do within the year. What about after the year and other days after? So really, from the Shabbat before the yahrzeit until the yahrzeit, you could say Ashkavat. You could also say on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. There is an inyan to say Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. Rosh Hashanah, the books of life and death are opened. And Yom Kippur, there's also because it's the sealing, the signing, the sealing. There are some that also during other Yom Tovim like Sukkot, Pesach, Shavuot that also even Chanukah, Purim that say Hashkavot um, for people. There's a thing by Ashkenazim called Yizkor that they do on the second day Yom Tov, and usually they kick out all the people that are not Yatomim. Whoever's not an orphan, they kick out of the room, and they do what's called Yizkor, which is, I think it's basically they say Ashkavot. So like what we do every day by Sfaradim, they do it like once every second day Yom Tov. So that's yeah. But all the other days of the year, the question is, what about a random Tuesday that's not in the year of mourning, not the yahrzeit, not the week? A person should not say Ashkava. And I remember Rav Minashi, Rav Yaakov Minashi, alav shalom, told me also it's not a good thing to do it because you're calling on the neshamot, you're calling on the soul to down when that soul is up in heaven, doing what they're doing, and you're taking away from them, and it's not good. It's not good for the neshamot when you just call and do a ashkava for neshama when it's not in the year of mourning or during the period of the yahrzeit. And it's something that that should not be done. And also even another thing sort of similar is when people go to the grave very often. It's not a good thing either. It's a tsar, it's a suffering for the neshama when people go visit chutz mi, besides the yort site, or a day before, or 2 days before, 2 days after, erev Rosh Hashanah, erev Yom Kippur, and Tisha B'av. Otherwise, and the yard site, a person should not go even visit the kever of that person. Um, Also, it's also written. The poskim say that also, in general, person should avoid going to a cemetery, bimiuchad, especially women, because it can affect. Rav Ovadia writes that affects many living people today in the shamot, and it's a big problem. So that's why it's not good to do these things unless very necessary, because remember there is a thing called met mitzvah. There is a mitzvah to bury the dead. So when it comes to that, okay, then that's a valid reason. Any questions? So very big question. When we say Lilui nishmat, ashkavot, etc., how do we address the name? Meaning, how do we say, for example, my name is Yaakov ben Avraham, right? So would we say, so let's say La'alenu in a situation, would we say Yaakov ben Avraham or Yaakov ben Ayelet? What would we say? What, for a man or for a woman? So would we say uh, Michal bat Sarah or Michal bat Avraham? Oh, what would we say? So it's a big machoket debate between Ashkenazim, Sfaradim, and even within Sfaradim themselves, it's a big machoket. So I don't know if I put the slide for that. By the Iraqis, I saw in the Ben Ish Chai, he says that you use the mother's name, meaning it would be Yitzchak ben Sarah. That's according to the Ben Ish Chai, he writes that. I know that the Aaron Abraham used to say, by the first 7 days, you use the mother, then revert to the father. That's what Aaron Abraham used to say. I don't know. Um, there's the Persians have the minhag to only do the father. So, for example, for a man, they'll do Yaakov ben Menashe, and for a woman, they'll do Sarah bat Yitzchak, for example. That's what the Persians do. Uh, the Bukharians usually do by the mother. So uh, um, they'll do Yitzchak ben Sarah and Sarah bat Michal, for example. That's what the Bukharians do. So it's different by different Sfaradim, different Ashkenazim. Um, Always good to ask your local Orthodox rabbi, but it seems the Fida Post. Some people say both. Sometimes the Fida Poskim. It seems like it is better to say the mother's name. That's what it looks like. I guess there's what to rely on otherwise for to say the father. But that's what see. I mean, based on Rav Ovadia and the Ben Ish Chai, I can say that. Any questions on that? So, what are the classic errors that people make when reciting Kaddish? We may see this a lot. I see this a lot, unfortunately. Um, so, for example, not saying the words and syllables correctly according to halacha. I spoke about this a bit before. There are letters and syllables that have to be said very carefully and very correctly. I didn't talk about this in the last shiur, but it's called dikduk, and the dikduk is specifically that word is talked about when it comes to pronunciation of letters and words. However, to be medakdek, to be careful and precise when it comes to mitzvot is a very big thing. And when Hashem uh, commanded us to do mitzvot and learn Torah, it wasn't just to just do the mitzvah. Oh, okay, I did this. Oh, okay, I did that. No, do it seriously, precisely. Um, for example, quick example, tefillin. Tefillin, if it's placed, not, if it's placed, it needs to be placed in between eyes, the tefillin shalosh, right? If it's placed over here, it's fine. If it's placed over here, it's not fine. If it's placed over here, it's not fine. And if a person places their tefillin on the forehead, which unfortunately this happens a lot, and it's a big pandemic, in my opinion, they did not fulfill the mitzvah of tefillin. So Hashem wanted us to be very, very precise in certain things. Then there are things that a person can just do. They're be lenient with, but everything is every single thing has is a different circumstance for them. But when it comes to dikduk, and this is why again I respect and have a lot of hakarat tov for Aaron Abraham on this. Unfortunately, a lot of people I see unfortunately a lot of people make these mistakes with saying uh the words correct. For example, they say yit kadal, not yit gadal. For example, they say with a kuf instead of a gimel. The Shulchan Aruch also says again. I could give a whole shiur on this, but the last thing about this, the Shulchan Aruch says that there are certain letters and words that need to be said with the throat. For example, Aaron Abraham used to say this joke uh, that however he made this joke about Ashkenazi, but really you can make it about everybody. Um, that they don't know the difference between themselves and the poor person. Why? Because there's ani with the aleph and then there's ani with the ain. And unfortunately, people don't make these distinctions, and it's not correct. The fi halacha, the fi poskim, it's not the right way to go. So that's why the things like ain, hayt, tait, these things need to be said with the throat. Again, this is a whole different shiur. I could ramble about this for a very long time. So, um, another thing that people make errors with is not being recited in unison with others. So, in the early days, it used to be that when Kaddish was recited, it used to be only the Chazan. He used to have in mind everybody's the names of everybody, and one person used to recite the Kaddish himself. That was how it was. Somewhere down the line, I'm not sure where, it changed, and this is the accepted minhag and the fida poskim. This is what we do today, is that when there are more than one person, a couple people reciting Kaddish, we have to say it to try and say it as best as we can in perfect unison. Why? Because we have to make sure that we get to each amen together so that the whole congregation can say amen to that person. If one person is behind, then they may miss the chance to hear for the people to respond to amen to that person's kaddish, and then they didn't fulfill the obligation and whatnot. So it's very important to say it in unison. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people that don't know this. And then, one guy will be Gaddal with Kaddash Shemer Rabba, and then the other person will be Anoseh Shalom V'Umav. This is not the way to do it, and it's not derech eretz. It's not nice, to another person to do that. Especially, let's say a person recites faster than the other. You're making that guy now recite faster. He may swallow his words. It's not nice. It's not generous. It's not. It's not how we. It's not derech eretz, acting kindly with people. It's not nice. A person should be respectful, and if he sees that a person is reciting louder, an older person, be more quiet, and again, not too quiet. A person needs to say it out loud that everybody can hear. If a person's saying it quietly, it's also a problem. But should say it, respectfully, so that he could say it with the person and they say it together. It's very, very important, these things. Very important to say it together. as one in unison. However, if a person, if let's say one person reached reached one amen, it says Yidgadal Kaddash Rabba, and then that person reached amen, and another person reached amen, so the congregation can say amen, and then another amen for that one. It's fine, but it's better to try to say in unison. Another thing that I don't know why this is a thing, unfortunately, but there are some people. The other thing, but not having feet together. Just like in Shmona Esrei, in the Amidah prayer, we have to have our feet together, just like the angels, because the angels, it looked like 1 foot, so we have our feet together to look like 1 foot. So even during Kaddish, we also have to have our feet together. The same halachot, by the way, walking in front of a person, just like in the Amida prayer, also apply to Kaddish also. Besides, after the Amidah Ba'alma, then the person can walk and in front of, because the Kaddish is only the Chatzi Kaddish. That is the Kaddish. The other stuff, Al Yisrael, Al Avantit, Gabal, these things were added on later for other purposes that we spoke about before. And the halacha, a person is allowed to walk in front of a person by when they get to that point of Al, but before that, nope. So not having feet together, or not standing in place. Some people may move around a bit, whatnot. I've seen that. That's not a person has to stay yashar, straight, and also needs to face the ark of the ark, meaning the echal where the Torahs are. Person has to face the ark of the synagogue. Very important. Same with Shema Esrei also. Any questions on this? So, can a child, this is a very good question, can a child under the age of bar mitzvah say Kaddish? Unfortunately, I've been in shuls where you hear a kid that haven't hasn't even hit puberty saying Kaddish, and it's very, very sad and very, very unfortunate. So there are certain Kaddishim that can and can't be said by someone that's younger than 13 and with the requirements. It's not just being bar mitzvah to be a part of a minyan and to be a chazan. There's certain requirements that I'm not going to talk about in this shiur. Um, so all kaddish that are an obligation. Oh, I wrote this wrong. Uh, so forgive my error. The kaddishim that are an obligation cannot be recited by somebody that is younger than 13 years of age. And it doesn't mean that he can't recite it with somebody else. That I'm not so sure about. But to be a chazan and or recite, or if he's the only one reciting it in the minyan, he cannot recite it if he's younger than 13 because there are certain kaddishim that are obligation. For example, one, there's one, two, three, 4, 5. There's like 6 or 7 Kaddishim in Tfilat Shachrit alone, and also there's some in Mincha, Arvit, that these are Kaddishim that are an obligation to hear. So these, someone younger than 13 can't recite. However, what about a Kaddishim that are not obligation, that are just voluntary? Like Al Yisrael of Dvar Torah and other things. So all the voluntary Kaddishim can be recited by somebody under 13 years of age. So yes. Now what are what's the difference between a obligation kaddish and voluntary kaddishim? We will talk about that. Let's continue. Can a woman say kaddish? Big question. So the minhag really is that women do not recite kaddish. It's halachically it's a debate among many poskim. It's not really encouraged, but there are times where I've witnessed it myself where there will be a woman in the women's section saying Kaddish quietly while the other men are saying it. And there is a inyan to do it, and it could be good for the neshama of somebody. It can be a good good thing for neshama. However, it is discouraged because of modesty issues, because it may not be modest to do that. And obviously, we know by women, modesty is a very, very big thing. Tzniut. So that is why it was not looked highly upon. Any questions on this? This is a big one. Any questions? Okay. Um, so and I kind of got to this before. Which Kaddish within the prayer is more important for the deceased? So by Ashkenazim, the Kaddish Yesh Shama after Aleinu. Sfaradim don't have this thing where we say Kaddish after Aleinu Shabech, unless we say some Tehillim after, like the famous uh, Tehillim Perik Chaf Zayin, the David. Hashem Aviv Yishi. So that we do, but because we said Tehillim. But after Alinu, the Ashkenazim do that, and that's the Kaddish Yatom. By Sfaradim, the Kaddish Al Yisrael before Alinu Shabech, where we say Barechu, that is the Kaddish Yatom, and that's the most important Kaddish for somebody to say. If, let's say, and that is an example, that is a voluntary Kaddish, as we said before. The Kaddishim that are our obligation, there are a couple of them in Tfilat Shachrit. Now the last one in Tfilat Shachrit, which is the Al Yisrael before Alinu Shabech, that is not an obligation. That is a voluntary Kaddish that was meant for the Yatomim. It's called Kaddish Batra, or Kaddish Yatom, it's also called. And that Kaddish is meant for specifically Yatomim. And let's say a person is running late, he needs to get to work, but he's saying Kaddish for somebody. The most important Kaddish that he should be there for is for that Kaddish. So if he has to leave after Alinu, say at least the Kaddish Baruch Hu. And also one of the things why you see that this is an important one, we say Sfaradim say Baruch Hu, by the way, after this one. Ashkenazim and the Nusach Sfard, they don't. But it's interesting because Rabbi Akiva, in the story of Rabbi Akiva, as we said, the he was told that he was supposed to say Kaddish and Baruch Hu. So that Arizal brought down that we, and this is why we say Baruch Hu et Hashem, or Rabbanan Baruch Hu et Hashem Barach is the Inyan. So that is the most important Kaddish for the Yatom by Sfaradim. Yes. Any questions? But one more thing. Even though this is the most important one to say, still a person should say all the Kaddishim that are for mourners. Not just this one, but everything else that there is, even the Dvar Torah. It's all very important. So now we'll give a bit of musar, bit of ethics on the importance of saying Kaddish for somebody. Is there any questions before we continue on the practical halacha, practical law aspect on the Kaddish, or anything that I talked about here? Feel free to put in the chat. I'll give it a minute. Where are we at? I'll give it a minute to put in the chat or speak. You can unmute the microphones and say something if so. Okay. Fine. So Musar is basically ethics. So the purpose of saying Kaddishim for someone is to, as we said, is to elevate the soul higher and higher. It doesn't just mean to take that person out of Gehenom if they're in Gehenom, hopefully not. But it doesn't just mean that. It also means that, let's say a person is in Gan Eden or Hal Nidul, which is a different thing, but or other places. But let's say a person is in Gan Eden, it also saying Kaddish for that person also brings him into higher levels in Gan Eden, because there's so many levels in Gan Eden, which is very deep understanding that majority of us, Bezrat Hashem, we will merit to understand that. But the Kaddish is also meant for people that are tzaddikim in Gan Eden, because it brings them higher into higher, in Gan Eden, higher levels. There's always so much more a person can go higher, especially in Torah and mitzvot and ma'asim tovim. So that's it. So another thing is that unfortunately we see that many kaddishim, many people that have to say kaddish, that have a chiyuv, an obligation from the Torah to say kaddish. This is specifically with parents, specifically. That's what a chiyuv is, a obligation. So when it comes to chiyuvim, there are unfortunately people that neglect ever saying kaddish for the parents, and it's a big disrespect. And it's and the parents in the heavens in Shemaim suffer because of it. It's very it's a very sad thing, unfortunately. And the truth is that let's say you were to pay a man who's a Talmid Chacham, big tzaddik, to say kaddish for for a person. That's very nice, and he's very holy. He studies Torah. He's very righteous in his character and whatnot. It's very good, but it's still not compared to the child of that person, whether he's so righteous or not so righteous, but he keeps certain mitzvot. It's better that that child, not being on that level, says Kaddish. It's much high. It's meaning it's much better for the deceased, for the biological son to say it. Um, there's also a inyan for a grandson that let's say the mother didn't have any brothers. There's an inyan for the grandson to say with the father's permission. Um, it's a big mitzvah of kibud avim for the grandson. Another thing is that I mentioned before, Kaddishim being neglected by by response, meaning there are people that, and it's the same thing, it's no different than neglecting to go to Minyan every day. It's very important to also hear Kaddish. And the Gemara says that a person who says Amen Yehi Shemei Rabbah Mevarach with all his or her might, Hashem destroys destroys the Gezel Din, the bad decrees that a person was subjected to or decreed upon. It's very important. Now, that doesn't mean you yell it out loud. It means you say it loudly, proudly, but don't go crazy. There are people, unfortunately, that go crazy. So it's very important to also hear the Kaddishim. As we said, we confess for it on Yom Kippur. Another thing that also is very important for people saying Kaddish is the Shabbat. What do I mean by this? That's a whole another thing, but the power of the Kaddish is not, and it's a hard thing sometimes to hear, but it's very true, and it's written down in Shulchan Aruch and by many poskim and by the Torah. But someone that desecrates Shabbat, doesn't keep Shabbat publicly, that's public desecration. Of course, a person can say Kaddish and do mitzvot and whatnot, but it's not the same. It's not near the same level as someone that is shomer Shabbat and saying Kaddish. It's not the same level. It's really not the same. And there are many books on this, many things on this, and I would say, the fidati, in my opinion, that if a person has a yard or whatnot, it's very good for that person to at least keep Shabbat, at least for the yard for those days, so that the Kaddish will be very strong. Not and also another thing to mention, as we said, saying the words incorrectly. There are a lot of people that, as I said before, that don't say the words properly, and that's also another thing that a person is trying to raise their loved ones neshama higher and higher. But when but chas v'shalom lo aleinu, we make mistakes with saying the words properly. It's not doing that, and person, as I said before, a person has to be very 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 careful um when saying the words correctly. Uh, any other questions to this? It's very important that that Alenu, if, if in mourning for somebody, a person say Kaddishim, commit every day to saying Kaddishim. I remember there was once a guy that there was once a guy in a shul that just lost his father, and he's not religious, and he asked the person that says Kaddish. He's like, "Can you say Kaddish for my father?" There's and I was saying to myself, and I didn't say this to the guy. I'm like, "Your father just passed away. Your father just, and all you could care." And he's like, "Oh, I can't do. I have work. I have my business." I'm like, "Your father just passed away, and this is your excuse? You have work? Mazze. It's what we have to realize how much our parents would do for us, how much our parents have done for us, and this is what we say. Oh, I have work to do. I can't go say Kaddish. I have work to do. That's I personally didn't, I did not agree with this thought. It's not, but unfortunately, this is the excuses today that people have for not saying Kaddish, and people don't understand. It's a very important thing to do it. It's a very, very important thing to do it. Okay, moving forward. So now let's see the different types of Kaddish. Um, Now I specifically put the Kaddish al Israel. I didn't put the other Kaddishim like Kaddish Tet Kabal and Chatzi Kaddish. Another thing I forgot to mention in the beginning, there's also a type of Kaddish we say on Tisha B'Av. Ashkenazim, I believe, say it by the burial of somebody. There's also a Kaddish we say for a Siyum, which the Yemenites, the Teimanim, say this Kaddish. Um, every Al Yisrael is that very, very long Kaddish. It's like a whole Megillah. And these Teimanim, Hashem yivarech otam, they have a very strong Misorah, strong customs from back then. They memorized this whole Megillah by heart like crazy. I don't know how they do it, but kol hakavod, bemet. So let's go over the different between Ashkenazi, Sfaradi. Let's go over it. So this is the Nusach Ashkenaz. Take a look at it. There, if anybody's ever seen the Sfaradi one, there are a bit of differences here. Some things are missing, some things are there. So this is the Ashkenazi, Nusach Ashkenaz, the Litvish Nusach. That is the Litvish Nusach. Then you have Kaddish for Nusach Sfard. Nusach Sfard is not Sfaradi. It is actually the Nusach of the Baal Shem Tov, and this is what the Hasidim that you see in in Borough Park or in Williamsburg, or also in Monroe or Muncie, Kiryas Yoel represent. This is the Kaddish that usually they say, and we see, for example, the Nusach Ashkenaz doesn't have Ve'asmach v'kaneh v'kareh b'shicheh, just like the Sfaradi has, but the Ashkenazim, they skip this and say v'chayechon v'chayechon. This is a very famous difference. There's other things, but this is Nusach Sfard Kaddish Al Yisrael. Then you have the Kaddish Al Yisrael of the Sfaradim, Nusach Edut HaMizrach, which is the Sfaradim. And take a look. This is the difference. This is we have a longer Kaddish compared to the Ashkenazim, especially by Yesh Amar Rabban Shemaya Chaim Sava V'Shva. They say Chaim Tovim Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael. We say Chaim Sava V'Shva V'Rufua V'Gula V'Slicha V'Chapara. And the famous name V'Ayavach V'Asala. The Ashkenazim love hearing that. Also, our Kaddish is longer. By the way, just to know, by Sfaradim, most of the things are longer. The davening is longer. We have Selichot all days of Elul. The Ashkenazim only the week before Rosh Hashanah, Shabbat before Rosh Hashanah. But how can you not love being a Sfaradi? It's and Ashkenazim also Ashkenazim, but they're things that even though we have to do this, we have to do this, I love it. So this is Sfaradi Kaddish. Take time to look if anybody wants to look. Moving forward. This is the Teimani Kaddish, the Fida Rambam and the Baladi. If anybody's familiar, I don't know if we have any Yemenites here, but the the Yemenites and the Baladi Yemenites. There's the Shami and the Baladi. The Shami were more like the Sfaradim. The Baladi had their own different thing. Like they have different part things that they put in the Tefillah based on the Rambam, based on the which is a Rishon, based on the Gemara, not based on Shulchan Aruch so much and whatnot. But they have a whole different Kaddish, and you see. This is the Al Israel, and we say this actually for a Siyum Masechet when somebody finishes a tractate in Gemara in the Talmud. We say datidla hata'a alma. We say all this in a siyum, but they say this whole Megillah every time they say Al Yisrael. Kol hakavod to them. I don't know how they say it, but yeah, a lot of people don't know that the Yemenites have a totally different thing. They have more stuff than the Sfaradim, and the Sfaradim always think, oh, we have the longest stuff. The Teimanim beat us to it because they have a Masorah. Anyway, so that is the end of that. I'm going to just pause the screen share for a sec, and I couldn't put this on the PowerPoint, but I am going to get this onto the Microsoft Word. One sec, the translation, so and we'll go over it in English quickly. Hello, everyone. Here we go. Sorry about that. Fine. So this is I actually put this together myself. The translations from Safaria. This is the Kaddish. Ali says this is Sfari one. So it says Yitgadal V'Kadash. May a great name of Hashem. Yitgadal V'Kadash. Shemei Rabbah. First, so Yitgadal V'Kadesh Shemo, meaning it's hard to explain this name, but in it's Aramaic, by the way. But it's hard to explain it. But Yitgadal higher and because sanctify Hashem's name. It says Ba'alma Dibarach Yuteh, in the world that He created according to His will. May His kingdom reign. And may He cause His redemption to spread. And may He hasten the Mashiach. And may bring the Mashiach. Then you have, and we say Amen. And you have V'chayechon in your lifetime, in your days, uh, in the lifetime of the whole house of Israel. And speedily, we say Amen. Then the famous, we say Yehesh Shemeh Rabbah Mevorach, powerful thing. May His great name be blessed forever and throughout eternity, blessed. Let's be holy in the name. Oh, it's reversed. May His great name be blessed forever and throughout the eternity, blessed. Glorified, exalted, exalted. Honored. This is it's hard to explain these words, but you get the picture. Then you have beyond all the blessings, all the song of praises, translations, world express, say Amen. And Al Yisrael. So, by the way, I could send this. I have this actually laminated. I have a laminated copy that I have in my tefillin bag of this. But yeah, if anybody wants this, I could send this to Shaul to have to maybe if the guys want to laminate this for the synagogue for people saying Kaddishim. This is very nice. But yeah, that's basically everything. Just want to say something quick regarding Tu B'Shvat, because tonight's Tu B'Shvat. It's very important to eat different types and say with blessings, obviously. Uh, we say blessings on fruits and other types. It's very important to say within the order all the blessings of foods, such as mizonot, shakol, hagefen, ha'adama, ha'etz, and Sadagefen and Motzi, and also Besamim if you have Besamim. These are very important things to say. The This is also a good time of when the this is where the seeds start to grow in life. The Gemara Masechet Rosh Hashanah says it's a machloket between Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel, Tanaim, when it was Tu B'Shvat. So Bet Shammai says that's the first of Shvat, which already passed, but Bet Hillel, who we hold by Bet Hillel until the Mashiach, is on Tu B'Shvat. And this is why Tu B'Shvat is tonight. And it's very nice to have many fruits and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's it for tonight. Thank you, everybody. Does anybody have any questions? It could be about the subject. It could be about anything. It could be, yeah. If anybody has any questions, I'll give some time for anybody to answer, to ask any questions.